Ladies and gentlemen, in July 1851, Friedrich Engels, the Manchester cotton lord and co-author of the Manifesto of the Communist Party, wrote to his friend Karl Marx in London with some very promising news. Speculation in railways is again reaching dazzling heights. Since the 1st of January, most shares have risen by 40%, and the worst ones more than any. This is promising. Clearly, capitalism's denouement was just around the corner. The East India market was overstocked, while the British cloth industry was being hit hard by a flood of cheap cotton imports. If the crash in the market coincides with such a gigantic crop, things will be cheery indeed. Peter Ehrman, his business partner, is already fouling his breeches at the very thought of it, and the little tree frog is a pretty good barometer. Bankruptcies were picking up in London and Liverpool, overproduction was glutting the market, and Engels was adamant that the end of capitalism was nigh. Instead, it wasn't to be. Exports surged, wages rose, standards of living improved, and the mid-Victorian boom ground inexplicably on. In 1857, Engels' optimism returned as the markets faltered. The American crash is superb, he wrote, and not yet over by a long chalk. Now we have a chance. The conditions for revolution were once again ripe. With the capitalist mode of production in collapse, the working class would surely rise to the occasion. But 2 months into the crash, the proletariat had still yet to realize its historic calling. There are as yet few signs of revolution, Engels noted gloomily, for the long period of prosperity has been fearfully demoralizing. So you will appreciate, friends, that there is something of a prehistory to this evening's debate. Indeed, my old friends Marx and Engels have been predicting the end of capitalism for over 150 years. And now our opponents are suggesting that the immediate failure of such predictions invalidates our claim that Karl Marx is right. And we would suggest quite the contrary. To argue this in the wake of cash machines crashing in Cyprus, over £60 billion spent on bailing out British banks, and the repercussions of the global financial crash still making their way through eviscerated social fabric of so many Western societies, well, I put it to you, it is positively perverse. As Terry Eagleton has written, in the light of the continuing global financial crisis, to claim that Marxism was finished was rather like claiming that firefighting was out of date because arsonists were growing more crafty and resourceful than ever. I would like to suggest to you that Marx has rarely seemed more relevant. Marx's stock resurges on a 150-year tip was how the New York Times marked the 150th anniversary of the publication of the Communist Manifesto, a text which more than any other, as they put it, recognized the unstoppable wealth-creating power of capitalism, predicted it would conquer the world, and warned that this inevitable globalization of national economies and cultures would have divisive and painful consequences. And the Times was right. Ladies and gentlemen, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels were the first to chart the uncompromising, unrelenting, compulsively iconoclastic nature of capitalism. It has pitilessly torn asunder the motley feudal ties that bound man to his natural superiors, and has left remaining no other nexus between man and man than naked self-interests, than callous cash payments. It has drowned the most heavenly ecstasies of religious fervor, of chivalrous enthusiasm, of Philistine sentimentalism in the icy water of egotistical calculation. And it was Marx who revealed how capitalism would crush languages, cultures, traditions, even nations in its wake. In one word, it creates a world after its own image, he wrote, long before globalization became a byword for Americanization. And Marx was also clear about the social consequences, the growing divisions between the lifestyles of the rich and the poor under unregulated capitalism, what Benjamin Disraeli and Ed Miliband would call the two nations. And in Britain, we have seen this problem with the emergence of the so-called squeeze middle. And the diagnosis is right. Our current models of capitalism are not working. The wealth generated by the growth prior to 2008 simply did not trickle down to ordinary people. Living standards began to stagnate from as early as 2003 and won't even return to that until well after 2015. And as for the growing extremes at the top and the bottom, well, just take a look at last week's fascinating Great British Class Survey with its account of the precariat, an update of Marx and Engels' proletariat and the elite. As Professor Mike Savage of the London School of Economics puts it, it is striking that we have been able to discern a distinctive elite whose sheer economic advantage sets it apart from the other classes. At the opposite extreme, we have discerned the existence of a sizable group which is marked by the lack of any significant amount of economic, cultural, or social capital. These are the two nations. The recognition of the existence of this group, along with the elite, is a powerful reminder that our conventional approaches to class have hindered our recognition of these two extremes, which occupy a distinctive place in British society. Who can tell us now that Karl Marx was wrong? So let us get to the crux of the matter. The 2008 crash and its lingering aftermath revealed the failure of the theology of the uncontrolled global free market. That is what we're arguing about. That is what capitalism is about. And all Marx and Engels' warning over the dangers of monopoly capitalism and concentrated finance have come to pass. So why then no total collapse of capitalism? Because right around the world, governments have been forced to bail out the so-called free market. We have bailed out the banks, we have subsidized industries, we've sorted out the insurance sector, we've underpinned financial services, we've kept the whole system afloat. From car scrappage schemes to AIG to nationalizing Fannie and Freddie Mae, it is the forces of collectivism which have saved capitalism. The level of public support, the extent of state involvement, how we all in this room bear the heavy burden of HBOS, Lloyds, RBS, and Northern Rock, how we as taxpayers underwrite every major transaction now across the City of London, how moral hazard has effectively been liquidated in the contemporary economy. The very continuance of capitalism under current conditions is proof that Karl Marx was right. Capitalism has once again crumbled under the weight of its own internal contradictions. And it is the state in America, in Cyprus, in China, in India, in the UK, which has once again saved it. The facade of normality is vindication of the crisis, and why you can have no hesitation in supporting this motion tonight. Although I do fear that Marx and Engels, rather than being delighted with the current turn of events, are themselves probably feeling fearfully demoralized. Thank you.